I did it. I finally did it. If you asked me 4.5 years ago when I bought my first property if I'd ever sell, at least in the first 5 years of owning real estate, the answer would have definitely been no. My long-term thinking was buy and hold, generational wealth, hold on to that property for as long as possible, but that's not what I did, not with this one. What's up everyone, my name's Avery and I'm a real estate investor and agent in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area, and in today's video I'm gonna go over why I ended up selling this property, the numbers behind it because that's obviously the most exciting part, and then some thoughts and final remarks and things that I actually learned when operating and owning this property. Now, obviously the two most important things for me being able to sell this property is now I can update my Instagram bio to over 500,000 sold because it was the first property that I sold as a real estate agent. And the second most important thing is you can scroll down and make that thumbs up button blue, and I'd really appreciate it. Now, $500,000 is a lot of money, and actually I can make that a little bit better. Now, $500,000 is a lot of money. So like I said, I sold my first property and there were really 3 reasons why I wanted to sell that property. So that property was located in Pinehurst, North Carolina. It's about an hour or so from me. It's a great golf destination. The 2024 US Open is going to be there. There's a lot of golf tournaments, people have weddings. It's fairly close proximity to Raleigh, North Carolina, and overall a pretty good stock of housing because they're all relatively new. But the first reason why I sold that property is because Airbnb rates went down significantly. A lot of things happened since I bought this property in April 2022. Other than on my own accord, I ended up renovating the property and started my own first short-term rental business, but they also no longer allowed any new properties to become Airbnbs in the area, which helped with supply, and there was a pretty high rampant amount of people coming in and putting new Airbnbs as listings on pretty much every single week when I was looking. Now, as we all know, in 2020 and 2021, there was a huge pent-up travel demand, and that really played into Pinehurst, North Carolina as well. The US Open said that it's going to start playing there every 5 years. They're bringing the US Golf Hall of Fame. Playing golf was a very COVID-friendly activity because it was outdoors and you could socially distance yourself from people. So this made it a great place for people to want to come visit. When I first started renting this property out in June of 2022, I roughly got a $250 to $270 a night average daily rate, which was pretty good. And in some months like July, I was getting 90% occupancy, with the lowest month getting around 50%. But even in some of those off nights and off months, I was still getting around $300 a night, to pretty much the lowest being about $200 a night. And now I will say my property was not a top 5% listing. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and even though it was on the second fairway, there weren't a lot of things that were setting it apart from other properties that might have been closer to downtown. On that Pinehurst number 2, the US Open course, I was on Pinehurst number 6. I didn't have a pool, I didn't have a hot tub, didn't have a game room, didn't have some of those other cool amenities that might make me stand out compared to some other people. So even though my property was really nice, people quite liked it once they got in there, the travel demand that had pent up and golf being an exciting thing for people to do during COVID really slowed down, coupled with the amount of short-term rentals that were available, because even though they no longer allowed new ones, people were still putting new ones out there on the market because it's kind of a hard thing to enforce anyway. So those nightly rates dropped from about $250 to $275 to averaging around $170 a night. Now I noticed this started to happen right before the summer and some of my rates were going down, but people had booked from really far away. So some of those longer term bookings that were far away, people were spending in the low 300s, but some of those people who were just going in right before the weekend booking their stay were spending around $175 because I had to lower it in order to keep that demand going. Another big point why these nightly rates went down was in 2021, the village of Pinehurst made it more difficult for you to actually play the courses. So if you're visiting the area, you can play Pinehurst 1, 3, and 5 without having to stay at the Pinehurst Resort. Now, in my opinion, those are the 3 worst of the 1 through 10 courses that Pinehurst has to offer. You couldn't even play the course that my house was located on without either being a member or staying at the Pinehurst Resort. Being a Pinehurst member costs you about a $35,000 initiation fee plus a $700 a month payment, which I wasn't going to pay and then have guests be able to utilize because that wasn't worth it, and then a lot of people visiting obviously didn't have that. All of these things for me made it seem like a far less lucrative and good idea to keep this property for the long term. Plus, I'm not a massive golf guy and I wouldn't see myself visiting this property when I'm a lot older and don't care so much about the cash flow and just wanted a place to visit. Second reason why I sold this property is because I want to take those funds and do other projects in my area. Not that I can't manage long distance property, which is actually a fairly simple and easy thing to do. I pretty much do it the same way that I manage things that are close by. but I really didn't want to have something in Pinehurst, a town that is still pretty solid, but not as much a town that I believe in from long-term economic growth as I do the Raleigh-Durham area. So I want to do a lot more projects closer to me. And lastly, the third reason is it will be a lot nicer to have some extra cash and not have to worry about making that mortgage payment because the cash flow is dwindling. I was getting on average around $5,000 a month in revenue when it was going pretty well, maybe sometimes $6,000, and some months even got up to $9,000 when it was high end in the summer. But then it started going down to about $2,000 in gross revenue, which means before paying cleaning fees and everything else, and my mortgage was about $2,000. And I didn't want to have to worry about paying that, and I'd rather just take the money out and put it into something that's performing better. Ultimately, that's why I decided to sell it, and with these proceeds specifically, I would like to purchase a tiny home and put it on the 5 acres of land that I have where my cabin is located that is doing extremely well on Airbnb, and play into that whole getaway stay vibe, which I really like, and it's another place that I could visit, add a hot tub, fire pit, which is what people are really excited about doing. Plus it's close by me and it's just a better stay overall, and I don't have nearly as much competition in that area because I'm kind of dominating it and getting a ton of great 5-star reviews. All right, let's talk numbers. Of course, this is the most interesting part. I purchased this property for $405,000 in April of 2022 with a $5,000 closing credit. I put 10% down, got a second home loan and a 4.125% interest rate that I actually bought down because I thought I would hold on to this property for a very long time. Ended up, I guess, wasting about $2,000 on that. Not really a huge deal because the return on this property was still pretty decent for holding it for 18 months. I ended up listing this property myself because I am an agent and it was the first property that I was able to sell for $529,000. Now, I included furniture in this property because I didn't want to have to deal with putting the furniture somewhere because frankly, I'd have nowhere to put it and then I'd have a pretty expensive storage bill. So the $529,000 accounted for all of the renovations that I did, which were roughly about $50,000. And then I also put in some furniture, of course, which was about $25,000. And then I had a roughly $40,000 down payment plus about $10,000 to $15,000 in closing costs. So that was my all-in cost, which was roughly about $135,000. I don't know if all those numbers that I spouted were exactly 135, but going into my accounting software, that's exactly how much money I did spend on this property, including down payment, closing costs, furniture, renovations, all that stuff. Spent a little bit more money over time as well, but of course earned some cash flow throughout this period. So from when I started listing it in June of 2022 to the day of sale, I earned about $8,000 to $9,000 in cash flow, meaning profit after all expenses, paying the mortgage, etc. It was higher, but for the last few months while I was trying to accommodate the sale, I did block off a lot of dates, and also the nightly rates started dwindling quite a bit, so I was not nearly making as much money, and those months were fairly negative. With that $530,100, I received a $156,000 wire transfer after paying for things like excise tax, paying off my loan, paying attorneys, and all the other closing costs that are associated with selling your property. And so with that money, it's pretty good. Mind you, I put in $135,000, so I ended up getting a roughly 25% return in an 18-month period with my cash flow as well as the money I got from selling the property. The other great thing about the sale is that the buyers came in all cash offer, didn't have to worry about an appraisal, which was helpful because the furniture was there, and obviously furniture does not go towards the value of a home, so when someone's appraising it, they would appraise it without the furniture, but the sale price I had the furniture included. The one thing not accounted for here is that I obviously have to pay taxes. There are long-term capital gains taxes because I held this property for over a year, typically a 15% payment. Obviously, I'm not a CPA, so I can't say whether or not the exact number of how much I owe for taxes, but just something to keep in mind. Although I recently did just do a cost segregation study, and that study cost me a couple $1,000s and came back with me being able to take a $91,000 tax deduction for my taxes from this year of 2023. Again, I'm not a CPA, so I'll see how that plays out, but that really should get rid of my entire tax burden. And I'll definitely be making a video on how that cost segregation study works and how all of the active income that I'm making from my W-2 job will pretty much be given back to me from a form of a tax refund. Final thoughts here on this property. I only owned it for 18 months, but it's been a great property more or less for a learning perspective. 25% return in 18 months, not that bad. Definitely not the best investment that I've made, but as far as something that I didn't really want to continue owning, something that I didn't see being a good investment for the long term, I'd say that's pretty incredible. I got some great learning lessons. I actually made a strong amount of money compared to a lot of places that I could have kept my money over the last year and a half. Really, I learned how to become a solid Airbnb host. I got my Superhost status from this property. I also then took the things that I learned when setting up this property, how to manage guests, how to manage my time being an Airbnb host, and put them into the properties that I do manage for other people and for myself outside of this Pinehurst property. The other thing this place taught me is I much rather prefer to own long-term rentals compared to short-term rentals, unless that short-term rental is really crushing it and making a lot of money. But long-term rentals, they just offer you a lot more time while still making you some money, and you get all these other benefits as well that you do with that short-term rental, but I feel like you just have more time. There you have it. That is the full breakdown of the property that I owned for 18 months, just sold and made a little bit of money on, what I plan to do with that money. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that video, and if you did, make sure you subscribe, can hear more about some of the things I'm doing in the real estate world, as well as learn about the agent business while I'm learning about it myself. And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Raleigh-Durham area, I'm definitely glad to help. Just hit me up with a comment or fill out my Google form down below, and you can say what you're trying to do, and I'll see if I can help you there. And if you guys did like this video, please hit that like button. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you can learn more. And thanks again for watching, and more wealth is coming your way.